Hi, everybody, and welcome to week 3 on critical theory. This is by far one of my most favorite weeks of the quarter and sort of my intellectual roots in a lot of ways for the dissertation work that I did. But I don't want to bias anybody. It's a fun one. We'll see what you think of it as we go. All right, so critical theory. What is critical theory? So according to scholar Douglas Kellner, who's a contemporary critical theorist, critical theory is multidisciplinary research and systemic and comprehensive social theory that is informed by a critique of capitalist domination and is also a theory of liberation. It's sharply critical of modernity because it sees modern institutions and their problems as outgrowths of capitalism, and it focuses on interrelationships among economic, political, social, and cultural spheres. So it's opposed to disciplinary boundaries and prefers interconnections to divisions. It's also deeply historical and maintains the importance of history and context when looking at social issues. The Frankfurt critical theory is really synonymous with the Frankfurt School. The well-known theorists of the Frankfurt School, Felix Weil, Walter Benjamin, Max Horkheimer, and Theodor Adorno, were deeply influenced by Karl Marx and Max Weber. They were Marxists who saw shortcomings with Marx's economic determinism and instead emphasized interconnections between culture, politics, society, and the economy. Following the Russian Revolution and the arrival of Nazism in Germany, this group of German academics from the University of Frankfurt, most of whom were Jewish, emigrated to the United States and ended up founding the Institute for Social Research at Columbia University in New York. This later became known as the Frankfurt School and synonymous with critical theory. Young intellectuals across Germany were frustrated by the failures of the Russian and German revolutions and were dispirited by their experiences during the First World War. These young radicals, including George Lukács, who we read about during week 1, were fed up with orthodox Marxism. They saw it as too deterministic and dogmatic. Instead, they favored a philosophy of praxis, that is, action-oriented, dialectical analysis of capitalist society as a totality. As Kellner writes, quote, "The individuals who would produce critical theory thus conceived of Marxism as an open-ended, historical, dialectical theory that required development, revision, and modification, precisely because it was, they believed, a theory of contemporary socio-historical reality, which itself was constantly developing and changing," end quote. They wanted to use their adapted version of Marxism to more effectively change their social world. So before you try to read this whole slide while I talk, please know that I've also posted this cartoon and its second half on the mini lecture page for this week. But as this cartoon points out, they married Marx and Freud and were profoundly impacted by the mass society they saw in America during the interwar years. The point I want to make with this cartoon is that critical theorists at the Frankfurt School were disgusted and inspired by what they saw happening in the US. Again, please wait to read this cartoon carefully later. But the critical theorists of the Frankfurt School were, frankly, horrified by what they saw as the dumbing down of the American public through mass communication. So this stands in pretty stark contrast with Dewey and Bernays from last week. The mass consciousness they saw was exactly the precursor to the fascism and totalitarianism that they had already experienced and that they deeply feared would eliminate the possibility of a mass awakening. Without mass awakening, there could be no revolution in the Marxist sense. Without that revolution, there would be no end to capitalism's control of labor, that is, capitalism's control of us. So Herbert Marcuse's 1964 One-Dimensional Man, which is referenced in the cartoon, describes exactly that sort of dystopian future that these theorists saw for us. This week's readings are polemics. They are intentionally provocative and challenging works that are meant to draw attention to the fact that the public is slumbering and it is this public which the authors hope to awaken. Their approaches differ and their solutions are distinct, but both sets of readings subscribe to the notion articulated in the cartoon that it's up to, quote, a small group of men or certain individuals and certain arts to right the ship and essentially to save us all. So they have a great deal of hope in communication, but also a great deal of disdain for what's happening in mass communication now. Here are the references for this week's slides, and I'll also upload my notes so that you can see the transcript as well. Have a great week, everyone. Thanks.